Hello friends, Assalamu alaikum. In this video I am going to give you the introduction of the book Think and Grow Rich, in which Thomas Edison and some other writers wrote it. Friends, this book is written by Napoleon Hill, who was a great writer and philosopher. So friends, we are starting from its chapter 1, Introduction. It's known as the man who thought his way into partnership with Thomas Edison. Friends, in this writer says that truly thoughts are things, and powerful things at that when they are mixed with definiteness of purposes, persistence, and burning desire for their translation into riches or other material objects. A little more than 30 years ago, Edwin C. Banks discovered how true it is that men really do think and grow rich. His discovery did not come about at one sitting. It came little by little, beginning with a burning desire to become a business associate of the great Edison. One of the chief characteristics of Bain's desire was that it was definite he wanted to work with Edison. Not for him. Observe carefully the description of how he went about translating his desire into reality, and you will have a better understanding of the 13 principles which lead to riches. When this desire or impulse of thought first flashed into his mind, he was in no position to act upon it. Two difficulties stood in his way. He did not know Mr. Edison, and he did not have enough money to pay his railroad fare to Orange, New Jersey. These difficulties were sufficient to have discouraged the majority of men from making any attempt to carry out the desire. But his was no ordinary desire. He decided to travel by blind baggage rather than be defeated to uninitiated. This means that he went to East Orange on a freight train. He presented himself at Mr. Edison's laboratory and announced he had come to go into business with the inventor. In speaking of the first meeting between Banks and Edison years later, Mr. Edison said, "He stood there before me looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come after. I had learned from years of experience with men that when a man really desires a thing so deeply that he is willing to stake his entire future on a single." He further says that turn of the wheel in order to get it, he is sure to win. I gave him the opportunity he asked for because I saw he had made up his mind to stand by until he succeed. Subsequent events proved that no mistake was made. Just what young Banks said to Mr. Edison on that occasion was far less important than the which he thought Edison himself said so. It could not have been the young man's appearance which got him the start in the Edison office, for that was definitely against him. It was what he thought that counted. Was definitely if the significance of this statement could be conveyed to every person who reads it, there would be no need for the remainder of this book. Vance did not get his partnership with Edison on his first interview. He did get a chance to work in the Edison's office at a very normal age. Doing work was unimportant to Edison but most important to Vance because it gave him an opportunity to display his merchandise where his intended partner could see it. Months went by. Apparently nothing happened to bring the coveted goal which Banksy set up in his mind as his definite major purpose, but something important was happening in Banks's mind. He was constantly incentivized his desire to become the business associate of the Edison. Psychologists have currently that when one is truly reaching for a thing, it puts in its appearance. Burns was ready for a business association with Edison. Moreover, he was determined to remain ready until he got that which he was seeking. He did not say to himself, "Oh well, what's the use? I guess I will change my mind and try for a salesman's job." But he did say, "I came here to go into life." He meant it. What a different story men would have to tell if only they would adopt a definite purpose and stand by that purpose until it had time to become an all-consuming obsession. Maybe young Barnes did not know it at the time, but his bulldog determination, his persistence in standing back of a single desire was destined to move down all opposition and bring him the opportunity he was seeking. When the opportunity came, it appeared in a different form and from a different direction that Barnes had accepted. That is the one of the tricks of opportunity. It has a silly habit of slipping in by the back door, and often it comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office device known at the time as the Edison dictating machine, now the Ediphone. His salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without great effort. Barnes saw his opportunity. It had called in quietly, hidden in a cure looking machine which interested no one but Barnes and the inventor. Barnes knew he could sell the Edison dictating machine. He suggested this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association grew the slogan made by Edison and installed by Barnes. The Business Alliance has been in operation for more than 30 years. Half its Barnes has made himself rich in money, but he has done something infinitely greater. He has proved that one really may think and grow rich. How much actual cash that original desire of Barnes has been worth to him, I have no way of knowing. Perhaps it has bought him $2 or $3 million, but the amount, whatever it is, becomes insignificant when compared with the greater asset he acquired in the form of different knowledge that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmitted into its physical counterpart by the application of known principles. Barnes literally thought himself into partnership with the great Edison. He thought himself into a fortune. He had nothing to start with except capacity to know what he wanted and the determination to stand by the desire until he realized it. He had no money to begin with. He had but little education. He had no influence, but he did have initiative, faith, and the will to win. With these intangible forces, he made himself number one with the greatest inventor who ever lived. Now let us look at different situation and study a man who had plenty of tangible evidence of riches but lost it because he stopped 3 feet short of the goal he was seeking. 3 feet from gold. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Driver was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold has been mined from the brains of men than has ever been taken from the earth. He struck a claim and went to work with the pick and shovel. The going was hard, but his lust for gold was defiant. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of the shining ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retraced his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and few neighbors of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery. Had it shipped, the uncle and I went back to the work mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to a small. The returns proved they had no one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear the depths, then would come the big killing in profits. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Derpa and uncle. Then something happened, the vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow and the port of gold was no longer there. They drilled on the desperately trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junkman for a few $100s and took the train back home. Some junkmen are dumb, but not this one. He called in a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with the fault lines. His calculations showed that vein would be found just 3 feet from where the database had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junk man took millions of dollars in ORA4 from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured through the efforts of Ayudabe, who was then a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors because of their faith in him. He paid back every dollar of it, although he was years in doing so. Long afterward, Mr. Abe recouped his loss many times. However, when he made the discovery that desire can be transmuted into gold, the discovery came after he went into the business of selling life insurance. Remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold, Tabe profited by the experience in his choosing work by the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. Tabe is one of a small group of fewer than 50 men who sell more than $1 million in life insurance annually. He owes his stickability to the lesson he learned from his quietability in the gold mining business. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with the much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is the quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. More than 500, the most of the successful men this country has never known, told Arthur their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat and had overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes great delight in tripping on one when success is almost within reach. A 50-cent lesson in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Rebbe received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by his experience in the gold mining business, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no. One afternoon, he was helping his uncle crane weight in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored charcoal farmers lived quietly. The door was opened and a small colored child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at her roughly. What do you want? Meekly, the child replied, My mummy says send her 50 cents. I will not do it, the uncle retorted. Now you run on home. Yes, sir, the child replied, but she did not more move. The uncle went ahead with his work. so busily engaged that he did not pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, "I told you to go on home. Now go, or I will take a switch to you." The little girl said, "Yes, sir," but she did not budge an inch. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill. Hopper picked up a barrel stave and started toward the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Darby held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness a murder. He knew his uncle had a fiery temper. He knew that colored children were not supposed to defy white people in that part of country. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward one step, looked up into his eyes, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, "My mummy got to have that 50 cents." The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, then slowly laid at the barrel stave on the floor, put his hand into his pocket, took out $half and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed toward the door, never taking her eyes off the man whom she just conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the wiping he had just taken. Mr. Darby too was doing some thinking. That was the first time all his all his experience that he had seen a colored child rapidly master an adult white person. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his friends and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did this child use that made her master over her superior? These and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later. When he told me the story, strangely, the story of this unusual experience was told to the author in the old mill on the very spot where the uncle took his wiping. Strangely, too, I had devoted nearly a quarter of a century to the study of the power which enabled an ignorant, illiterate colored child to conquer an intelligent man. As we stood there in that musty old mill, Mr. Darby repeated the story of the unusual concern and finished by asking, "What can you make of it? What strange power did that child use that so completely wiped my uncle?" The answer to his question will be found in the principle described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains detailed instructions sufficient to enable anyone to understand and apply the same force which little child accidentally stumbled upon. Keep your mind alert and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command for your own benefits. The same irresistible power, the awareness of this power may come into the first chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of plan or a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experience of failure or defeat and bring to the surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. After I had described to Mr. Rabe the power unwittingly used by the little colored child, he quickly retraced his 30 years of experience as a life insurance salesman and frankly acknowledged that his success in the field was due in no small degree to the lesson he had learned from child. Mr. Darby pointed out every time a prospect tried to bore me out without bang, I saw that child standing there in the old mill, her big eyes glaring defiance, and said to myself, "I gotta make this sale." The better portion of all sales I have made were made after people had said no. He recalled to his mistake in having stopped only 3 feet from goal, but he said that experience was a blessing in disguise. It taught me to keeping on, no matter no matter how hard the going may be. A lesson I needed to learn before I could succeed in anything. This is the story of Mr. Darby and his uncle, the colored child, and the gold mine. Doubtless will be ready by hundreds of men who make their living by selling life insurance. And to all of these, the author wishes to offer the suggestions that Darby offers to these two experiences ability to sell more than $1 million of life insurance every year. Life is strange and often imponderable, but both the success and the failures have their roots in simple experience. Mr. Darby's experiences were commonplace and simple enough to yet they held the answer to his destiny in life. Therefore, they were as important to him as life itself. He profited by these two traumatic experiences because he analyzed them and found the lesson they taught. But what of the man who has neither the time nor the inclination to study failure in search of knowledge that may lead to success? Where and how is he to learn the art of converting defeat into stepping stones to opportunity? In answer to these questions, this book was written. The answer called of a description of 13 principles. But remember, as you read the answer, you may be sticking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life, may be found in your own mind through some idea, plan, or purpose which may spring into your mind as you read. The most practical of all that is known constraints, ways and means for creating useful ideas. Before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly, in such great abundance that no one wonders where they have been hiding during all those long years. This is an astonishment, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you will observe that riches begin with a state of mind, with a definite purpose, with little or no hard work. You and every other person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire the state of mind which will attract riches. I spent 25 years in research and learned more than 25,000 people because I too wanted to know how wealthy men become that way. Without the research, this book could not have been written. Here, take notice of very significant truth. Why the business depression started in 1929 and continued on to an all-time record of destruction until sometime after President Roosevelt entered office. Then the depression began to fade into nothingness, just as an electrician in a theater resists the light, so gradually the darkness is transmuted to light before you realize it. So did the spell of fear in the minds of the people gradually fade away and become faith. Observe very closely as soon as you master the principles of this philosophy and begin to follow the instructions for applying those principles, your financial status will begin to improve and everything you touch will begin to transmute itself into an asset for your benefit. Impossible not in all weakness one of the main weakness One of the main weaknesses of mankind is the average man's familiar with the word impossible. He knows all the rules which will not work. He knows all the things which cannot be done. This book was written for those who seek the rules which have made others successful and are willing to stake everything on those rules. A great many years ago, I purchased a fine dictionary. The first thing I did with it was to turn to the word impossible and neatly clip it out of the book. That would not be an unwise thing for you to do. Success comes to those who become success conscious. Failure comes to those who differently, allow themselves to become failure conscious. The object of this book is to help all who seek it to learn on the art changing their minds from failure conscious art to success conscience. Another weakness found it altogether to many people is the habit of measuring everything and everyone by their own impressions and beliefs. Some who will read this will believe that no one can think and grow rich. They cannot think in terms of riches because of their thought habits have been steeped in poverty, want, misery, failure, and defeat. These unfortunate people remind me of a prominent Chinese who came to America to be educated in American ways. He attended the University of Chicago. One day, President Harper met this young Oriental on the campus, stopped to chat with him for a few minutes, and asked what had impressed him as being the most noticeable occurrence of the American people. Why the Chinaman exclaimed, "The curious land of your eyes are of slant. What do we say about Chinese? We refuse to believe that which we do not understand. We foolishly believe that your own limitations are the proper measure of limitations. Sure, the other fellow's eyes are of slant because they are not the same as your own. Millions of people look at the achievements of Henry Ford after he has arrived and envy him because of his good fortune or luck or genius or whatever it is that credit of for Ford's fortune. Perhaps one person in every 100,000 knows the secret of Ford's success, and those who do know are too modest to or too reluctant to speak of it because of its simplicity. A single transaction will illustrate the secret perfectly. A few years back, Ford decided to produce his now famous V8 motor. He chose to build an engine with the entire 8-cylinder car cast in one block and instructed his engineers to produce a design for the engine. The design was blessed on paper, but the engineers agreed to a man that it was simply impossible to cast an 8-cylinder gas engine black in one piece. Time is required. The engineers went ahead. There was nothing else for them to do if they were to remain on the Ford staff. 6 months went by, nothing happened. Another 6 months passed, and still nothing happened. The engineers tried every conceivable plan to carry out the orders, but the thing seemed out of the question, impossible. At the end of the year, Ford checked with his engineers and again informed him they had found no way to carry out his orders. "Go right ahead," said Ford. "I want it and I will have it." They went ahead, and then, as if by a stroke of magic, the secret was discovered. The Ford determination had won once more. This story may not be described with minute accuracy, but the sum and the substance of it is correct. Deduce from it, you who wish to think and grow rich, the secret of the Ford millions. If you can, you will not have to look very far. Henry Ford is a success because he understands and applies the principles of success. One of these is desire, knowing that what one wants. Remember this Ford story as you read, and pick out the lines in which the secret of his extravagant achievement have been described. If you can do this, if you can lay your finger on the particular group of principles which made Henry Ford rich, you can equal his achievements in almost any calling for which you are suited. You are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul, because when Henley wrote the prophetic lines, "I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul," he should have informed us that we are the masters of our fate, the captains of our souls, because we have the power to control our thoughts. He should have told us that the ether in which the tidal earth floats, in which we move and have our being, is a form of energy moving at an inconceivably high rate of vibration, and that the ether is filled with a form of universal power which adapts itself to the nature of thoughts we hold in our minds and influences us in natural ways to transmute our thoughts into their physical equivalent. If the poet had told us of this great truth, we would know why it is that we are the masters of fate, the captain of our souls. He should have told us with great emphasis that is the power makes no attempt to discriminate between destructive thoughts and constructive thoughts, that it will urge to us to translate into physical reality thoughts of our poverty just as quickly it will influence us to act upon thoughts of riches. He should have told us too that our brains become magnetized with the dominating thoughts which we hold in our minds, and by means with which no man is familiar. These magnets attract to us the forces, the people, the circumstances of life which harmonize with the nature of our dominating thoughts. He should have told us that before we can accumulate riches in great abundance, we must magnetize our minds with intense desire for riches, that we must become money conscious until the desire for money drives us to create definite plans for acquiring it. But being a poet and not a philosopher, Henley contented himself by studying great truth in poetic form, leaving those who followed him to interpret the philosophical meaning of these lines. Little by little, the truth has unfolded itself until it now appears certain that the principles described in this book hold the secret of mastery over our economic fate. We are now ready to examine the first of these principles. Maintain a spirit of open-mindedness, and remember as you read they are the invention of no one man. The principles were gathered from the line of experience of more than 500 men who actually accumulated riches in huge amounts, men who began in the poverty with but little education without influence. The principles work for these men. You can put them to work for your own enduring benefit. You will find it easy, not hard to do. Before you read the next chapter, I want you to know that it conveys factual information which might easily change your entire financial destiny, as it has so definitely brought changes of stupendous proportions to two people of described. I want you to know also that the relationship between these two men and myself is such that I could have taken no liberties with the facts even if I had wished to do so. One of them has been my closest personal friend for almost 25 years. The other is my own son. The unusual success of these main success which they generously accredit to the principle described in the next chapter more than justifies this personal reference as a means of emphasizing the far-flung power of this principle. Almost 15 years ago, I delivered the commitment address at Salem College, Salem, West Virginia. I emphasized the principle described in the next chapter with so much intensity that no one of the members of the graduating class definitely appropriated it and made it a part of his own philosophy. The young man is now a member of Congress and an important factor in the present administration. Just before this book went to the publisher, he wrote me a letter in which he so clearly stated his opinion of the principle outlined in the next chapter that I have chosen to publish his letter as an introduction to the chapter. It gives you an idea of the rewards to come. My dear Napoleon, my service as a member of Congress having given me an insight into the problems of men and women, I am writing to offer a suggestion which may become helpful to thousands of worthy people. With apologize, I must state that suggestion, if I acted upon, will mean several years of labor and responsibility for you. But I am hearted to make the suggestion because I know your great love for rendering useful service. In 1922, you delivered the commencement address of Salem College when I was a member of the graduation class. In that address, you planted in my mind an idea which has been responsible for the opportunity I now have to serve the people of my state, and will be responsible in a very large measure for whatever success I may have in the future. The suggestion I have in mind is that you put into a book the sum and substance of the address you delivered at Salim College, and in that That way, they may give the people of America an opportunity to profit by your many years of experience and association with the men who by their greatness have made America the richest nation on earth. I recall as though it was yesterday the marvelous description you gave of the method by which Henry Ford, with but little schooling, without a dollar, with no influential friends, rose to great heights. I have made up my mind then, even before you had finished your speech, that I would make a place for myself no matter how many difficulties I had to surmount. Thousands of young people will finish their schooling this year, and within the next few years, every one of them will be seeking just such a message of practical encouragement as the one I received from you. They will want to know where to turn, what to do to get started in life. You can tell them because you have helped to solve the problems of so many people. If there is any possible way that you can afford to render so great a service, may I offer the suggestion that you include with every book one of your personal analysis charts in order that the purchaser of the book may have the profit of a complete self-inventory, indicating as you indicated to me years ago exactly what it is standing in the way of success. Such a price, such a service as this, providing the readers of your book with a complete unbiased picture of their faults and their virtues, would mean to them the difference between success and failure. The service would be principal, priceless. Millions of people are now facing the problem of staging a comeback because of the depression, and I speak from personal experience when I say I know these earnest people would welcome the opportunity to tell you their problems and to receive your suggestion for the solution. You know the problems of those who face the necessity of beginning all over again. There are thousands of people in America today who would like to know how they can convert ideas into money. People who must start a scratch without finance and recoup their losses. If anyone can help them, you can. Book if you publish the book, I would like to own the first copy that comes from the press, personally autographed by you with the best wishes. Believe me, Courtney. Now, friends, we are turning to the chapter number 2, and this is named Desire, the starting point of all achievements. The first step toward riches. When Edwin Seabands climbed down from the freight train in Orange J more than 30 years ago, he may have resembled a tramp, but his thoughts were those of a king. As he made his way from railroad tracks to Thomas Edison's office, his mind was at work. He saw himself standing in Edison's presence. He heard himself asking Mr. Edison for an opportunity to carry out the one consuming obsession of his life, a burning desire to become the business associate of the great inventor. Ben's desire was not a hope, it was not a wish. It was a keen, pulsating desire which transcended everything else. It was definite. The desire was not new when he approached Edison. It had been Ben's dominating desire for a long time. In the beginning, when the desire first appeared in his mind, it may have been probably was only a wish, but it was no more wish when he appeared before Edison with it. Few years later, Edwin Simmons again stood before Edison in the same office where the first met the inventor. This time his desire had been translated into reality. He was in business with Edison. The dominating dream of his life had become a reality. Today, people who know bands envy him because of the break life yelled him. They see him in the days of this Trump without taking the trouble to investigate the cause of his success. Barnes succeeded because he chose a definite goal, placed all his energy, all his willpower, all his effort, everything back of that goal. He did not become the partner of Edison the day he arrived. He was content to start in the most menial work as long as it provided an opportunity to take even one step toward his cherished goal. 5 years passed before the chance he had been seeking made its appearance. During all those years, not one ray of hope, not one promise of attainment of his desire had been held out him. To everyone except himself, he appeared only another cog in the Edison's business wheel, but in his own mind, he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time, from the very day that the first went to work there. It is a remarkable illustration of the power of definite desire. Barnes won his goal because he wanted to be a business associate of Mr. Edison more than he wanted anything else. He created a plan by which to attain the purpose, but he burned all bridges behind him. He stood by his desire until it became the dominating obsession of his life and finally a fact. When he went to Orange, he did not say to himself, I will try to introduce Edison to give me a job of some sort. He said, I will see Edison and put him on notice that I have to come to go into business with him. He did not say, I will work for a few months and if I get no encouragement, I will quit and get a job somewhere else. He did say, I will start anywhere. I will do anything Edison tells me to do. But before I am, although I will be his associate, he did not say I will keep my eyes open for another opportunity in case I fail to get what I want in the Edison organization. He said there is but one thing in this world that I am determined to have, and that is a business association with Thomas Edison. I will burn all bridges behind me and stake my entire future on my ability to get what I want. He left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. That is all there is to Ben's story of success. A long while ago, a great, very faced a situation which made it necessary for him to make a decision which ensured his success on the battlefield. He was about to send his armies against a powerful foe whose men outnumbered his own. He loaded his soldiers into boats, sailed to the enemy's country, and all unloaded soldiers and equipment. Then gave the orders to burn the ships that had carried them. Addressing his men before the first battle, he said, You see the boat going up in smoke. That means that we cannot leave these shores alive unless we win. We now have no choice. We win or we perish. They won. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn his ship and cut all sources of retreat. Only by so doing can one be sure of maintaining the state of mind known as burning desire to win, essential to success. The morning of the Great Chicago Fire, a group of merchants stood on State Street looking at the smoking remains of what had been the stores. They went into a conference to decide if they would try to rebuild or leave Chicago and start over in a more promising section of the country. They reached a decision, all except one, to leave Chicago. The merchant who decided to stay and rebuild and pointed a finger at the remains of his store and said, Gentlemen, on that very spot I will build the world's greatest store, no matter how many times it may burn down. That was more than 50 years ago. The story was built. It stands there today, a towering monument to the power of the state of mind, known as a burning desire. The easy thing for Marshall Field to have done would have been exactly what his fellow merchant did. When the going was hard and Richard looked dismal, they pulled up and went there where the going seemed easier. Marked well this difference between Marshall Field and other merchants because it is the same difference which distinguishes Banks from thousands of other young men who have worked in the Edison organization. It is the same difference which distinguishes practically all who succeed from those who fail. Every human being who reaches the age of understanding of the purpose of money wishes for it, wishing or will not bring riches, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an opposition, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches and backing those plans with precision which does not recognize failure will bring riches. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent consists of six definite practical steps. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It's not sufficient merely to say I want plenty of money. Be definite as the amount. There is a psychological reason for definiteness which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Third, establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not to put this plan into an action. Fifth, write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire. Name the limit, name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for the money and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Sixth, you read you read your written statement aloud twice daily, once just before retiring at night and once after arising in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. Instructions described in the six steps. It is especially important that you observe and follow the instruction in the sixth paragraph. You may complain that it is impossible for you to see yourself in possession of money, but before you actually have it, here is where a burning desire will come in to aid. If you truly desire money so keenly that your desire is an obsession, you will have no difficulty in convincing yourself that you have that. To convince yourself you will have it. Only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money conscious means that the mind has become so fully saturated with the desire for money that one can see oneself already in possession of it. To the uninitiated who has not been schooled in the working principles of the human mind, these instructions may appear impractical. It may be helpful to all who fail to recognize the soundness of the six steps to know that the ordinary laborer in the steel mills but managed, despite his humble beginning, to make this principal yield him a fortune of considerably more than $100 million. It may be of further help to know that the six steps he recommended were carefully scrutinized by the late Thomas Edison, who placed his stamp of approval upon them as being not only the steps essential for the accumulation of money but necessary for the attainment of any definite goal. The steps call for no hard labor, they call for no sacrifice, they do not require one to become ridiculous or credulous to apply them, calls for no great amount of education, but the successful application of these six steps does all for sufficient imagination to enable one to see and to understand that accumulation of money cannot be left to chance, good fortune and luck. One must realize that all who have accumulated great fortune first did a certain amount of dreaming, hoping, wishing, desiring and planning before they acquired money. You may as well know right here that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into a white heat of desire for money and actually believe you will possess it. You may as well know also that every great leader from the dawn of civilization down to the present was a dreamer. Christianity is the greatest political power in the world today because its founder was an intense dreamer who had the vision and the imagination to see realities in their mental and spiritual form before they had been transmuted into physical form. If you do not see great riches in your imagination, you will never see them in your bank balance. Never in the history of America has there been so great an opportunity for practical dreamers as now exists. The 6-year economic collapse has reduced all men substantially to the same level. A new race is about to be run. The stakes, the rules of the race have changed because we now live in a changed world that definitely favors the masses, those who had but little or no no opportunity to win under the conditions existing during depression, pain, fears, paralyzed growth and development. We who are in the race for riches should be encouraged to know that this changed world in which we live is demanding new ideas, new ways of doing things, new leaders, new inventions, new methods of teaching, new methods of marketing, new books, new literature, new futures for the editor, new ideas for moving pictures. Speak of all this demand for new and better things. There is there is no one quality there is one quality which one must possess to win, and that is definite of such purpose, the knowledge of what one wants and a burning desire to possess it. The business depression marked the death of one age and the birth of another. This changed world requires practical dreamers who can and will put their dreams into action. The practical dreamers have always been and always will be the pattern makers of civilization. We who desire to accumulate riches should remember the real leaders of the world always have been have been men who harnessed and put into practical use the intangible unseen forces of unborn opportunity and have converted those forces or impulses of thought into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, automobiles, and every form of ferments that makes life more pleasant. Tolerance and an open mind are practical necessities of the framer of today. Those who are afraid of new ideas are doomed before they start. Never has there been a time more certain to pioneers than the present. True, there is no wild and woolly west to be conquered as in the days of the covered wagon, but there is a vast business, financial, and industrial world to be remolded and redirected along new and better lines. In planning to acquire in planning to acquire your share of the riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this changed world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past whose dreams have given to the civilization that all that it has of value of the spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our civilization. All that it has of value spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our own country, your opportunity and mind to develop and market our talent. Let us not forget Columbus dreamed of an unknown world, staked his life on the existence of such a world and discovered it. Copernicus and the great astronomer dreamed of a multiplicity of worlds and revealed them. No one recognized him as practical after he had trumped instead the world worshipped at his shrine, the proving once more that success requires no apologies, failure permits no alibis. If the thing you wish to do is right and you believe in it, go ahead and do it. Put your dream across and never mind what they say if you meet with the temporary defeat, for they perhaps do not know that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Henry Ford, poor and uneducated, dreamed of a horseless carriage, went to work with what tools he possessed without waiting for opportunity to favor him, and now evidence of his dream bears the entire earth. He has put more wheels into operation than any man who ever lived because he was not afraid to back his dream. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood to put his dream into action despite more than 10,000 failures. He stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. Practical dreamers do not quit. And friends, now I am going to tell you another story in which we learn Now, friends, Valen dreamed of a chain of cigar stores, transformed his dream into action, and now the United Cigar Stores occupy the best corners in America. Lincoln dreamed of freedom for the black slaves, put his dream into action, and barely missed living to see a united North and South translate this dream into reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would fly through the air. Now one may see evidence all over the world that dream profoundly. Marconi dreamed of a system of harnessing the invisible forces of the ether, evidence that he did not dream in vain may be found in every wireless and radio in the world. Moreover, Marconi's dream brought the humblest cabin in the most stately manner because when house side by side, it made by the people of every nation on earth bake your neighbors. It gave the President of the United States a medium by which he may talk to all the people of America at one time and on short notice. It may interest you to know that Marconi's friends had him taken into custody and examined in a psychopathic hospital when he announced he had discovered a principle through which he could send messages although the air without the aid of lights or the other direct physical means of communication. The dreamers of the day far better. The world has become accustomed to new discoveries, nay, it has shown a willingness to the reward dreamer who gives the world a new idea. Greatest achievement was it. Greatest achievement it the bird waits in the egg and in the highest vision of the soul. A walking angel street dreams are the settlings of the reality. Awake, arise, and assert yourself, your dreamers of the world. Your star is now in the ascendancy. The world depression brought the opportunity you have been waiting for. It taught people humility, tolerance, and open-mindedness. The world is filled with an abundance of opportunity which the dreamers of the past never know. A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. Dreamers are not of born infants in legends of lake ammunition. The world no longer scoffs at the dreamer nor calls him impen. If you think it does, take a trip to Texas and witness what a dreamer president has done in the way of harnessing and using the great water power of America a score of years ago. Such a dream would have seemed like madness. You have been disappointed, you have undergone defeat during the depression, you have felt the great hurt within you crushed until it bled. Take courage, for these experiences have tempered the spiritual metal of you are made. They are assets of incomparable value. Remember too that all who succeed in the life to get off a bad start and pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the life of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crisis through which they are introduced to their other lives. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress, which is among the finest of all English literature, after he had been confined in prison and sorely punished because of his views on the subject of religion. O. Henry discovered the genius which slept with his brain. After he had met with great misfortune and was confined in a prison cell in Colum, Ohio, being forced through misfortune to become acquainted with his other self and to use imagination, he discovered himself to be a great author instead of a miserable criminal and outcast. Strange and varied are the ways of life, and stranger still are the ways of infinite intelligence, through which men are sometimes forced to undergo all sorts of punishment before discovering their own brains and their own capacity to create useful ideas through imagination. Edison, the world's greatest inventor and scientist, was a trained telegraph operator. He failed innumerable times before he was driven finally to the discovery of the genius which slept with his brain. Charles Dickens began by pasting labels on baking pots. The tragedy of his first love penetrated of the depth of his soul and converted him into one of the world's truly great authors. The tragedy produced first David Company, then a succession of other works. They made this a richer and better world for all who read his books. Disappointments over love affairs generally has the effect of driving men to drink and women to ruin, and this may, because most people never learn the art of transmitting their instructions emotion into dreams of a constructive nature. Helen Keller became deaf, dumb and blind shortly after birth. Despite her greatest misfortune, she has written her name indelibly in the pages of the history of the great. Her entire life has served as evidence that no one ever is defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality. Robert Burns was an illiterate country lad. He was cursed by poverty and grew up to be a drunkard in the bargain. The world was made better for his having lived, because he clothed beautiful thoughts in poetry, and Thurby plucked a thorn and planted a rose in its place. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, handicapped by race and color, because he was tolerant, had an open mind at all times on all subjects, and was a dreamer. He left his impress for good an entire race. Be- Beethoven was deaf, Milton was blind, but their names will last as long as time endures, because they dreamed and translated their dreams into organized thought. Before passing to the next chapter, kindly anew in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these states of mind and a working knowledge of the principles described, all else that you need will come to you when are ready for it. Let Emerson state the thought in the words: every proverb, every book, every word that belongs to the tree of forehead and comfort shall surely come to home through open or winding passages. Every friend whom not the phantasm will buy, but the greater and tender soul in the craveth shall lock thee in his embrace. There is a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. Open mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, and belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity than is required to accept misery and poverty. A great poet has correctly stated his universal truth through these lines: I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer, he gives you what you ask, but once you have set the wages, why you must bear the task. I worked for a manual's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I had asked of life would have willingly paid. Desire outwits Mother Nature. As a 15th climax to this chapter, I wish to introduce one of the most unusual persons I have ever known. I first saw him 24 years ago, a few minutes after he was born. He came into the world without any physical sign of years, and the doctor admitted when pressed for an opinion that child might be deaf and mute for life. I challenged the doctor's opinion. I had the right to do so. I was the child's father. I too reached a decision and returned an opinion, but I expressed the opinion silently in the secrecy of my own heart. I decided that my son would hear and speak. Nature could send me a child without ears, but nature could not induce me to accept the reality of affliction. In my own mind, I knew that my son would hear and speak. How? I was sure there must be a way, and I knew I would find it. I thought of the words of the immortal Emerson: the whole course of things goes to the teach us faith. We need only obey. There is a guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening we shall hear the right word, the right sword, the right word desire more than anything else. I desired that my son should not be a deaf mute. From that desire I never received, not for a second. Many years previously I had written our only limitations are those we set up in our minds. For the first time I wondered if that statements were true. Lying on the bed in front of me was a newly born child without the natural equipment of hearing. Even though he might hear and speak, he was obviously disfigured for life. Surely this was a limitation which their child had not set up in his own mind. What could I do about it? Somehow I would find a way to transplant into the child's mind my own burning desire for ways and means of conveying sound to his brain without the aid of ears. As soon as the child was old enough to cooperate, I would fill his mind so completely with this burning desire to hear. The nature would, by methods of our own, translate it into physical reality. All this thinking took place in my own mind, but I spoke of it to no one. Every day I renewed the pledge I had made to myself not to accept a deaf mute for a son. As he grew older and began to take notice of things around him, we observed that he had a slight degree of hearing. When he reached that age when children usually begin talking, he made no attempt to speak, but we could tell by his actions that he could hear certain sounds slightly. That was all I wanted to know, as I was convinced that if he could hear even slightly, he might develop still greater hearing capacity. Then something happened which gave me hope. It came from an entirely unexpected source. We brought a Victrola. When the child heard the music for the first time, he went into ecstasy and promptly appropriated the machine. He soon showed a preference for certain records. Among them, it's a long way to Tripoli. On occasion he played that piece over and over for almost 2 hours, standing in front of the Victoria with the teeth clamped on the edge of the case. The significance of this self-formed habit of his did not become clear to us until years afterward, for we had never heard of the principle of bone conduction of sound at that time. Shortly after he approached by the Victrola, I discovered that he could hear me quite clearly when I speak with my lips touching his mustard bone or at the base of the brain. These discoveries placed in my possession for the necessary media by which I began to translate into reality my burning desire to help my son develop hearing and speech. By that he was making steps at speaking certain words. The outlook was far from encouraging, but desire backed by faith knows no one such word as impossible. Having determined that he could hear the sound of my voice plainly, I began immediately to transfer to his mind that desire to hear and speak. I soon discovered that the child enjoyed bedtime stories, so I went to work creating stories designed to develop in him self-reliance, imagination, and a keen desire to hear and to be normal. There was one story in particular which I emphasized by giving it some new and dramatic coloring each time I was told, if designed to plan in his mind that his affliction was not a liability but an asset of great value. Despite the fact that all philosophy I had examined clearly indicated that every adversity brings with the seed of an equivalent advantage.